All right, guys, let's get into how to choose a location to set your bait barrel. Probably the most important thing to think about here is how you're going to enter and exit that bait site. That is most crucial. Bear with me, I'm not an artist, but I'm going to draw a bait barrel here really quick. So we've got our bait barrel. And now maybe these are canyons coming down here. So you've got a couple drainages, you got a couple canyons coming down. Now probably what you want to think about most importantly is how you're going to access that bait site. How you're going to walk in and walk out from that bait site. That may be a truck road coming along the bottom here. That may be a four-wheeler trail coming along the top and you're accessing this way. That's what you want to think about. You want to be able to access that bait site easily. You want to be able to get in and get out. I'm not saying you want to get closer to the road. I'm saying you want easy access in and out that does not disturb the areas where your bears are coming from. So you want to really be able to think about those travel trails for those bears. Where are they coming from? Now, on established bait sites, this is a lot easier to figure out. Sometimes you just have to set a bait barrel, you have to set your game cameras, and you have to do your research. You have to try to figure out where those bears are coming from. For example, if you're parking here on your four-wheeler and you're walking into your bait site this way, and those bears are coming in right across your trail, 9 times out of 10, especially until they get comfortability, 9 times out of 10, those bears are going to circle that bait site and they're not going to come in while you're on the bait site. The best strategy is to get to where those bears can come and go from that bait site without crossing the trail that you're coming in on. Now this is hard to do. A lot of big smart bears are going to circle your bait site regardless. And those bears you're just going to have to get comfortable with. And there's a million other factors we're going to talk about on other videos. Today we're just talking about entrance and exit from that bait site. So think about that. Make it to where, try to decide where you can come in from below the bait site possibly. A lot of times bears aren't crossing the roads back and forth much during the evening travel. A lot of times they'll be coming from the deeper, darker, thicker part of the woods. They'll also be coming from water. So if you can think about your water, if you can think about where they're bedding during the days, that's where they're going to be coming from. They will cross the roads in the evenings, but usually you have a lot more travel on the roads. They're not going to cross those roads until after dark most of the time. So if you can access that bait site from the bottom or the top, however, and not cross any big deep areas where those bears are bedded, that's probably the best strategy. I like to set my bait sites to where I can access in and out without getting through a lot of deadfall, a lot of down timber, making a lot of noise. I like to be able to get in and get out. Okay? So that's your first step. Get in and get out. Easy access, not close access. It's okay if you want to hike in 2 miles or 3 miles or however far you want to hike in, but maybe you can do that through a drainage, through a trail, through an area that you're not disturbing the bears. If you're walking into your bait site and you have to walk through all of the bedding areas to get to your bait site, more than likely you've disturbed those bears. They're going to come to your bait site. You're going to get pictures of them, but they're not going to come in while you're on the bait site. Now, comfortability is a big factor here, and we're going to talk about comfortability in another YouTube video. Like I said, for now, we'll just talk about entrance and exits, but there's other factors that's going to play in here. This is important. So once you have entrance and exit, you want to think about your stand location. Now, same thing. You don't want your stand location to be right here when the bears are coming from here, because now the bears are coming from behind you, and more than likely you're going to be on your cell phone, you're going to be moving, you're going to be scratching your nose, swatting at mosquitoes, whatever. Those bears are going to be back here and they're going to see movement, and they're going to do the same thing. They're just going to wait until you leave. Also, you got to think about the thermals and the wind. The The best thing to do there, most of the time, your thermals are going to be heading downhill in the evening, uphill in the mornings. So think about that. What I like to do there is I feel like that's a good strategy, but I also feel like every area is a little bit different. I mean, they naturally do always go downhill in the evening, but sometimes it's not straight downhill. Sometimes you'll have an east or a west drift. And so every time you're in those canyons, I usually take a mental note, or document it on your cell phone. Hey, on Tuesday, the wind was blowing east. The wind was blowing east. And if you can kind of get those common denominators, it's an important factor when you're setting those bait sites. So just kind of always be paying attention when you're at those bait sites about the weather, the way the wind's moving. If you can dial in a lot of constants, you're better off. So once you kind of get an idea of what you're going to do there, and you're setting your tree stand, on this particular bait site, if I had bears coming from behind me and I'm parking down here, I'm going to want to access and get right in that tree stand. I don't want to have to go, well, we'll talk about the backdoor method as well. That's another strategy, but this comes later on once you have bears to the bait site. You've got to condition those bears. We're going to talk about it in another YouTube. Once I make that YouTube video, I'll put the link in here, and we can talk about that as well. You want to be able to enter and exit that bait site easily. So if this is your tree stand, that's what you want to do. You want to get in and get out. You don't want to walk up and check your trail cameras and put fresh scent on the bait site. You don't want to have to do a big circle here and get in your tree stand over here. You want to be able to get in and get out. But take into consideration those thermals. If you have no choice, just make it as simple as you can to get in there. That's probably some of the most important factors when you're actually setting your bait site. Now, a couple other things I want to mention is, and we'll get into this as well in other videos, but we want to also make sure we're not out in the wide open on those bait sites. If you have a lot of good thick cover here, that's more than likely where your bears are going to enter the bait site. So by you accessing through a clearing or something like that, that's great. As long as you're not skylighting or those bears are seeing you or watching you walk in for miles, get in and get out. So make sure your bait barrel, what you want to do is make sure your bait barrel is not out in an open clearing. You want them bears to be able to access that bait site comfortably. They don't like to walk across the clearing. They don't like to be out in the open. They will at night, but during the day, they want to be fairly dense. So you've got to make sure you've got enough shooting room, but you also don't want to make sure you're on a bare side hill. Now, I know it works. I know guys that have done it. I think there's a lot of factors here. Most of the time, we're dealing with high-pressured areas, and in high-pressured areas, you're not going to get those bears coming out on bare open side hills when they don't have to. If there's another bait site, a mile or half a mile or maybe a couple hundred yards down the trail, they're going to find those comfortable areas, and those are the bait sites they're going to hit. So try to keep your barrel in an area that is good, dark, dense timber, but also try to factor in your entrance and your exits. If there's any questions, please comment below. I'd like to hear what your opinions are there. This is probably step number one. We're going to cover them all. We're going to do a video on everything as far as setting barrels. This is really important to think about. Try to get a bait site that you can enter and you can exit without disturbing that whole area. Anyways, like and subscribe. If you have any questions, let me know. And thanks for watching.